friends, welcome back to my channel, Patronosaurus Reads. I'm Katie, aka Patronosaurus, and I read. Today I have my July wrap-up. I read 14 books in July, which is pretty good. I read 3 2-star books this month, and the first of those was The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. This is a very popular mystery book about a woman who has agoraphobia, and she just kind of stays in her house, doesn't go outside ever, and spies on her neighbors using her camera. And one night she witnesses a murder. When she tries to report it, people don't believe her. She's told she's wrong, blah, blah, blah. I mentioned this in my Goodreads review of this book, which if you're not following me on Goodreads or any of my social media, all those links are down below, so you can hit those up. But I've realized that I don't really like mysteries. I think I like thrillers a lot more. I like a fast-paced type of story, and this was not that. This was a lot of this woman, Anna, sitting around in her house and being sad about herself and everything around her, and to me it was just very boring. So I was not a fan. My next 2-star read this month was The Summer of Jordi Perez by Amy Spalding. I don't know. There was just something about it that I just didn't like. I wasn't super compelled by any of the characters. I wasn't... except for Jax. Jax is the best. Love Jax. But everyone else, I was like, I don't care about you. I don't care about your relationships with each other. Like, whether that's parent and child, or siblings, or the actual romantic relationship. I didn't think they were written in a very compelling way. This book is a female-female romance, and the main character is fat as well, so if you're interested in reading a book with that kind of representation, maybe you'll like it more than me, so give it a shot. My last 2-star read of the month was The Sacrifice of Sunshine Girl by Paige McKenzie. This is based off of a YouTube series called The Haunting of Sunshine Girl, which is how I first found out about this book series. I used to really like that web series. Lately, it's gone off the rails a little bit. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, and I feel like the books followed in that suit. I think every book in this series for me has been a 2-star, but I've mainly read this so I could say that I finished it, and to fulfill a prompt in a reading challenge I was doing on a Goodreads group where you had to read a book with the word sun in the title, and this is the only one I owned that I hadn't already read. It's about this girl named Sunshine who has like magical powers and can help ghosts cross over to the other side, and demons try and kill her. It's like a whole thing. Really not good, not compelling, not interesting. The first, I would say 3 or 4 seasons of the web series are really good, so if you're interested in that kind of storyline, maybe just go watch the web series instead, because these books are not that good. Okay, moving on to my 3-star reads. I had 5 of those, the first of which is Misadventures with a Professor by Sierra Simone. Oh, Sierra Simone. She just gets it with the sex scenes. Like, she does. They're good. So that's why I read this book, even though generally, like, a teacher-student relationship is very much like an ew for me. But Sierra Simone knows how to write good relationships, so I was like, okay. And in this particular book, the concept is that this student, she's not really a student, she's doing some research, and partnering with a professor that her father knows, because her father is also a professor. So she goes to England, and she has one night in London, and she's like, okay, I'm tired of being a virgin. I'm gonna have sex with whoever will have me tonight. Turns out she goes to, like, wherever she is in the countryside to do her research, and the partner, the, like, professor that she's partnering with is the guy that she met the night before that she, like, did the stuff with, and it turns into a whole thing. It was not super memorable, but it was good. It was cute. If you're interested in that type of storyline, I think you will like it. My next 3-star read this month was Gods of Jade and Shadow by Sylvia Moreno Garcia, which I got through NetGalley, so thank you NetGalley and the publisher for sending a copy my way. I was so excited to read it, and then it fell short of my expectations a little bit. This is a not modern fairy tale, but also not fairy tale. I guess historical fantasy fairy tale. It's set in the 1920s in Mexico, which is very interesting. Like, I hear about the Roaring Twenties in New York City all the time, but this is in Mexico, in a much different setting. It's about this girl who's essentially a Cinderella-esque character. She and her mother live with her grandfather's much more wealthy family, and they kind of treat the mom and the granddaughter like dirt. Until main character Cassiopeia gets into this trunk that her grandfather always has locked, but one day he leaves the key behind while he goes off to do something else. So she opens it and gets into it. It turns out it was holding one of the gods of the underworld. And he's like, hey, you need to help me get revenge on my brother, who is the one who asked her grandfather to hold me here. And she's like, okay. Basically, she has no choice. For me, the writing style is very difficult to get through. Kind of similar to Madeline Miller's writing. It just kind of feels like I'm just like swimming through some mud, and it's really hard for me to understand it and get through it. It did bring up really interesting questions about morality and human motivation and some really interesting things. It was good, just not 100% my style. So if you're into a more dreamy kind of fairy tale type of story, you might really like this a lot more than I did. My next 3-star read this month was I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. It's about this guy named Robert Neville, and he is in the middle of a post-apocalyptic wasteland where like everybody's a zombie, and he's trying to survive, and he kind of sucks. And that's why this book is 3 stars. Because every woman he sees, he's like, oh, it's my manly urge. I can't stay in this house forever, even though I know if I leave, they'll get me. But I want to bang all these women. Like, dude, gross. Stop. I hated this main character that I can't tell if we're supposed to like him or if we're supposed to hate him. If we're supposed to hate him, then this book did a really good job. But if he is supposed to be really sympathetic and relatable as the last man on Earth, the author did a really bad job. And I was not a big fan. This might not be a 3-star, actually. This might be a 2-star. The next 3-star book I read was this Beast, The Modern Fairy Tales. What are they all? Oh, Tithe, Valiant, and Ironside by Holly Black. This is like this big bind up of all the books in this series, and it's the new cover that matches The Cruel Prince, because these books do take place in that same universe, but they were written way, way, way before that, and you can tell that this first book came out in 2002, and all these teenagers are smoking cigarettes. Who smokes cigarettes? Yeah, very middle of the road. They're just... you can tell it's a product of its time, and that's why it's 3 stars. I read this to kind of keep up with this, what is it, like the Fairyland read along or whatever it is, hosted by Melanie and Super Space Chick and other people that I can't remember. I'll link at least one of their announcement videos down below, so if you're interested in catching up and reading all these books in preparation for The Queen of Nothing, the final book in the Folk of the Air trilogy, coming out in November. So they're reading all these books that are set in the same universe that Holly Black has written. But these were the first ones, and they are very 2002, and I don't love them. My final 3-star read this month was Final Girls by Riley Sager. It follows this girl, I guess she's not a girl, she's a woman, she's an adult, who was the final girl in this murderous rampage when she was out camping with her friends, and she was the only one who made it out alive. And there's kind of this club of other final girls who survived massacres of their own, and they kind of get to know each other until one of them dies. And the main character then meets up with the other final girl, and they're kind of trying to figure out if the first girl's death was a suicide, as everyone claims, or if someone murdered her, and she's getting to know this woman better and trying to understand what happened. And she doesn't remember what happened, when she was in the midst of this attack, so she doesn't know exactly what occurred. And so there are chapters throughout of slowly but surely showing you, the reader, and the main character, she's starting to remember what happened. I felt it was a little slow paced. Like I said, I do prefer a very quick paced thriller type of book, and this was more of a mystery. But I did really like it. I liked the character motivations. I thought the characters were really interesting. And a lot of the things that happened were just like bonkers, but in a good way. But it was really slow for me, so it was 3 stars. Moving on to my 4-star reads, I had 4 of those. 4 stars. That's pretty good. The first of which was There's Something About Sweetie, which is the second book, but it's like a companion to When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. And it's about Rishi's younger brother. What's his name? Ashish. And he is such like an insecure little bean, and I love him. And then he meets this girl, Sweetie, who is fat, and everyone has a problem with it. Her mom constantly talks down to her and tells her she isn't good enough because of her weight, even though she's the fastest track star in the state of California, basically. Her mom still thinks she isn't good enough. And a lot of the things that people were saying to Sweetie really got me, and I was like, oh, I have experienced this. And it was rough to read, but also really refreshing to see Sweetie take control of her own destiny and say, no, I'm comfortable in my skin, this is who I am, I'm talented and wonderful and amazing. And I love that, and I love their relationship, and they were super cute. My next 4-star read was Misadventures on the Night Shift by Lauren Rowe, another book in this Misadventure series. What do you know? This is about a main character. I finished this book less than a week ago. What is her name? Abby. This main character, Abby, she works the night shift at this fancy hotel, and one night a very famous rock star comes in after he kind of blows up at his concert, and he rents out the penthouse, and his whole managing team is like, he's going to stay in this penthouse and he's going to write his next album, and it's going to be great. And Abby goes up there to, I don't know, deliver some room service or something, I don't know. But they end up developing a rapport. And then, more than that, because they, you know, bow chicka wow wow. And it was really good. I liked their dynamic so much. The way, what is his name? The way Abby and Lucas, his name is Lucas, the way Abby and Lucas played off of each other and were able to give and take really quickly and easily was so great. Like, their banter was fantastic. The reason it's 4 stars is because the ending was so abrupt and so crappy. I was like, this book was great. And then it went downhill very quickly. Like, what the heck happened? But the whole rest of it, up until like the 80% mark, was really, really good. My next 4-star read this month was War by Laura Thalassa. We finally got the second book in the 4 Horsemen series. So War is riding through the Middle East. So he's in Jerusalem. That's where our main character lives. Her name is Miriam. He's riding through, and he sees Miriam, and he doesn't kill her. And she's like, what? And he's like, you're my wife. And she's like, what? And then he just like takes her, and she lives in the war camp and like travels along with War and all the other people that he's basically conscripted into this army to help him kill all the rest of humanity. And she's like, I don't support this. And he's like, whatever, you're my wife. And she's like, okay. But slowly but surely she breaks down his walls, and it's very similar in a lot of ways to Pestilence, but like War as a character is very different from Pestilence as a character, and I love that. But there's one thing, is War said some very specific things about how he and Miriam were going to do the deed. And then he didn't do those things, and he is not the type of character who doesn't do what he says he's going to do. So not only is that not satisfying for the reader in terms of like, this is a book that has a shirtless man on the cover, So, like, this is just unsatisfying for that aspect because you're looking for a very specific thing in this book. And 2, that's not good from a writing perspective and characterization. Like, you have set up this character to be this type of person, and then he does not act the way that he would, that, like, you as an author have claimed that this is the type of person he is, but then he doesn't do it. It was annoying. So that's why it only got 4 stars, because I was salty that they didn't have sex in the way that War said they were going to have sex. My final 4-star book of the month was Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Yes, I finally read this book. It came out 2 months ago. I finally did it. It's still pretty as always, but the inside was not quite as pretty as I was hoping it to be. Still 4 stars. Still very good. This follows Aurora, who was supposed to go on a mission to help colonize this planet, but her ship got lost in space, basically, and so she's been floating for 200 years, and Tyler, who is a captain in the Aurora Academy, finds her, saves her, brings her back, but because of that, he misses the draft to choose the people that he's going to have on his team, so he basically gets the losers of the Academy. And they're sent off on their first mission, and Aurora's with them. And lots of crazy things happen. After that, I don't want to give you too much. The main reason why this only got 4 stars instead of 5 is every character in this book, like every member of their crew, has perspective chapters, but they are not evenly distributed. And I don't think that's fair to the character who got 3 chapters, 2 of which only had like 1 sentence each. I want to know that character. She's very interesting. And I don't get to know her at all. I know nothing about her. And it was really, really unsatisfying to have this incredible cast of characters and feel like one of them is deliberately being pushed aside. I was not a fan of that. But other than that, the plot was really good. It moved really fast, as you would expect from Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. There was lots of intrigue and mystery, and you're trying to figure out how Aurora was the only person on this ship to survive drifting in space for 200 years, why her ship didn't make it to its destination in the first place, like all these things you're trying to figure out along with all the characters. Yeah, I just wish that all the characters had been given love instead of just like, I would say 3 of them were given like the most love, and I wanted all of them to have the love. I'm down to my last 2 reads of the month, both of which were 5 stars, and the first of those was Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I got so lucky, you guys. Okay, so sometimes on my Libby app, I will just change the filtering to show me books by release date, and then I'll look through and see which books they've ordered that aren't even out yet, or see which ones are new that I might be able to get really quickly. Maybe there's not a wait. And I must have been looking on the app like right after my library bought their copy of Lock Every Door and put it up on the app, because I was first in line on that holds list. So when release day hit, I got it. I had it on my Kindle. I was going for it. I read this book in one day. I read it on release day, and it was so good. I think I definitely like it the most out of Riley Sager's books. The other 2 books I gave 3 stars. This one was 5. Maybe I just like the pacing better because I read it in one day. Like, maybe it's still slow paced. Maybe it's not. I just love the whole book. I should tell you what it's about. This book is about this woman who gets a job as an apartment sitter, basically, in this very fancy high-rise in Manhattan, where they have very specific rules about people who are taking care of the apartments when they're in between tenants, because they don't want any of the units to be unoccupied for any reason. They say it looks bad for the building or whatever, so this girl's like, okay, whatever, sounds great. So she moves in, she starts getting ready to live in there and get settled in, and her first night there, maybe the second night, it's like really soon after she moves in, she hears this scream from one of the other apartment sitters, and she goes down and talks to her, and the girl's like, no, I'm fine, everything's fine, you didn't hear a scream, I'm okay. And the main character's like, sure, Jan, whatever. But she goes back up to her apartment, and the next day the other apartment sitter is gone. She's missing. So, main character, whose name I cannot recall, this is how I live my life, sorry. She is trying to solve the mystery of what happened to the other girl, where she went, did something bad happen to her, is there something more sinister going on at this building? It's called The Bartholomew, by the way, and it has its own character. The Bartholomew is incredible, it's so cool, and it really feels like it's its own character in the story because it has such a strong presence. And it was spooky, it was creepy, it was fast-paced, there was so many layers of mystery. It was just really good. I highly recommend it. It's definitely the best of Riley Sager's books, and I hope more of his books kind of lean more in this direction as he continues writing, because I thought this was definitely a winner. And my last 5-star read of the month was The Adventure Zone, Murder on the Rockport Limited by Clint McElroy, Justin McElroy, Travis McElroy, Griffin McElroy, and Carrie Peach, the artist. This is a graphic novel adaptation of my favorite podcast of all time, The Adventure Zone, starring the McElroy brothers, plus their dad, Clint. It's so good. It's so good. This is the second book in the series. See, there's a little number 2 here on this D20. How cute. This is one of my favorite arcs in The Adventure Zone. It was a D&D campaign that these boys and their dad played. And then it became a graphic novel series. This book did hit number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list in its first week, just like the first book did last year. I'm so happy. When I saw it on Twitter, I cried. Whatever. And I love that they're using the opportunity in this graphic novel to kind of retcon some details that didn't make sense in the podcast, because when they first started, they didn't know where the story was going to go. The DM, the youngest brother, Griffin, this is an artistic rendition of him right here, he didn't know where the story was going to go, and so they were able to use this opportunity with the graphic novels to add in some details and change some things so the story overall will make more sense in the graphic novels, and I really appreciate that they're doing this. If you haven't read these before or listened to the podcast, I think these graphic novels will stand on their own. Obviously, I can't say for sure because I have listened to the podcast, but if you like Dungeons & Dragons, I think this is really, really fun, and if you don't know it but are maybe interested in learning about it, like, this is how I learned about D&D and kind of how to play. Like, they don't really play, but podcast is great, the graphic novels are great, the art is wonderful, it's great. Okay, that's my July wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought, or if I've convinced you to read any of them, especially The Adventure Zone. God, please read The Adventure Zone. It's so good. Yeah, let me know. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe. That's what YouTubers say. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.